KPRC2 News begins right now with breaking news.
And right now we're going to go to some breaking news in North Harris County near Spring. You see a man is barricaded in a home. This is a live shot from Sky 2, and you can see smoke coming from that home.
We continue to follow this breaking news. We're talking about the suspect accused of setting another home on fire earlier this week and hitting his estranged wife with his vehicle. We do begin with that breaking situation, though, in North Harris County. Thank you for joining us. I'm Daniela Guzman.
And I am Keith Garvin. Deputies right now are in a standoff near Lotus Blossom Street and Camellia Chase Court. The man involved is accused of setting a house on fire earlier this week, as Daniela said, then hitting his estranged wife with his car. The house where he was barricaded in tonight, where he is at tonight, now has that smoke that you saw coming out of it right now.
That's right. Bill Barajas is there on the ground. He is live from the scene, and he's trying to get us the latest information. Bill, we know this is breaking news. We're going to just shoot off some questions to you. Tell us what you know, because I know that, again, as breaking news, these are developing information as well, and you're getting information. All right, Bill, let's start off by asking you, that smoke that's coming from inside the house, how long ago did that happen?
I would say within the last 30 to 40 minutes is when we heard those loud bangs, and then shortly after that we started seeing some smoke come from the house. Again, just before that and throughout this whole thing, we've heard them trying to make contact with Pablo Patino, who was inside. Negotiators talking to him about coming out with his hands up through the front door, saying that his family was here, saying that that his mother, that his sister, that his daughter all wanted him to come out safely. But again, it was after those bangs that we heard, about 3 or 4 or so, that we started seeing smoke come from the top of the house. Now, if you will give me a minute here, I have Maya. She lives in this neighborhood, has been here for about 15 years. You said you've been here since about 3 o'clock. Yes. Trying to get a sense for what you've seen and what you've heard. Just we talked about it just off camera. Talk to me about what you've seen and what you've heard.
Yes, so I came in and I seen the fire department, the police officer, and everybody coming in. They told her multiple times to come out. So they finally gave in and just, got their gear up and got towards the house and just ramshacked in there.
And you said from your vantage point, you could see them, what you believe to be them barricading the door.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then after that, what did you see?
Smoke. First it was light smoke, and it's black smoke coming out the house.
And I've been here with you. We see the smoke sort of fill the sky. It sort of died down at this point, but it's still coming from the roof of that home.
Yes, correct. Yes, it looks pretty bad. We don't know if he's still in there or not, so they're still trying to figure out, tell him to come out. He's still not coming out yet.
Okay. Thank you, Maya. We'll talk to you in just a bit. Guys, just lots of people, as we mentioned in the 4 o'clock hour, 4:30 hour, that they had moved back from some of these homes where you can now see caution tape behind me. They have now moved back. We were talking to a few of them. Everybody out here trying to figure out what's going on. Maya said she's lived here for 15 years, never seen anything like this. The biggest thing, again, those loud bangs that we heard moments ago, and then the smoke coming from the house. I want to show you that smoke one more time as we toss it back to you guys in the studio. Daniela, Keith?
Yeah, Bill, while we have you, we do see pictures from that smoke, video from that smoke. You mentioned the loud bangs. What other types of communication have you been able to hear or see law enforcement trying to get in touch with that individual in the house?
Well, we've just heard the loudspeaker, and we've heard it over and over and over again, possibly over 10 times, where, again, they've asked Pablo to come out. They've called him by name, told him that his family was here, explained that his daughter and that his sister and that his mother all wanted him to come out safely, and that they wanted to help him, but that they needed him to come out with his hands up through the front door. Now, Daniela asked me in the 4:30 hour if there had been any communication back and forth. We have not heard that. So far, it has been one-sided, and that one side has been law enforcement trying to communicate with Pablo Patino, which they believe is inside that home that is now smoking.
Hey, Bill, this home, I just want to clarify, Pablo Patino lived in this home. This is his home. Is that correct? Do we know that?
From what we understand right now, from authorities, this is the home he shared
with his family,
with his wife. Right. And he was at this home when his estranged wife showed up with two Harris County Precinct 4 deputies to retrieve some belongings. He apparently made them aware that he was at the home and then began making threats, which at that point the deputies and his estranged wife backed off, and then you have this situation turn out the way it does, right, where numerous law enforcement agencies flood the scene. Now you have Spring Fire and several other fire trucks as well responding. But as you guys well know, in some of these scenes, when the fire trucks show up, even if the house is smoking, it's hard for them to get to the house and actually put out that fire or that smoke, just because there is danger there. So that falls on the law enforcement officers right now to try to contain this, because you don't want to put firefighters in danger as they are working to put the smoke out.
Yeah, Bill, and, the smoke that we see, you said it's died down a little bit. It looks like it's turned white. And that and usually in a house fire, that's actually a good sign, which shows that the fire is starting to die out. Is that what you're still seeing, or are you seeing a pretty steady flow of smoke right now?
So just from our vantage point, and we are pretty far back, I'm sure the camera can give you a better view than what I can see with my own two eyes. But the smoke has been ongoing since we first reported it, and it's kind of on and off, died down, and then kind of picked back up a little bit. But it is white smoke, as you mentioned, and in most cases, Keith, you're right. That is a good sign, and it means that the fire it might be out. But again, the smoke has been constant.
Bill, we're seeing right now what looks like some sort of truck or crane that is hoisted against the front of the home through a window and possibly a ladder. Somebody, we don't know who it is, but somebody is on that ladder that just either came out of the home. But maybe possibly law enforcement trying to enter the home, help put out this fire, and check to see, if Patino is still inside.
Yeah, it looked like an individual, and there is a hole, like perhaps over a garage. It's a window, and there was a machine, a large machine that had a crane there at that window, and there was at least one individual who came out of that window. Looks like the glass and the frame is broken. And right now, if you're looking on your screen, you can see that house, and it looks like just a black square. Mm-hmm. But there was an individual, at least one individual, like that did come out. Yeah. Yes.
This is a ground shot that we're giving you now. Mario Diaz is there, and we have crews there. We're trying to get some information as well. But at this point, as we continue to see smoke and get answers and figure out if Patino is there, if he's the one that set the house on fire, we're going to go to Mario Diaz. He's actually in the newsroom right now, and he's following these developments as well for us. Mario?
Yeah, hi, Danielle. I just got off the phone with a law enforcement source who's very experienced with these kind of situations. And I said, what are you seeing here? What is going on? First thing he said, listen, before everybody jumps to the conclusions that you're seeing this smoke, you think the obvious. In reality, in these kind of situations, SWAT teams move in and they will fire what he says are tear gas into the home. And obviously he was pointing out certain rounds that he said were consistent to what he has seen in the past through his own experience with regards to tear gas. Now, we did see what is called a Bearcat, that military style assault vehicle, go up to the front of the house. It had that battering ram that went up through the gable right there at the top of the garage there just a few minutes ago. And then you saw more smoke coming in right through there at the very front. But they did deploy that. It's also called a Rook that they have, which is a small little vehicle that's it's called a armored skid steer, the Rook, and they brought that in as well. But right now, they're very, very cautious in these kind of situations, he was telling me, because you do see that smoke. But initially I said, what if it was a fire? And he said, well, sometimes you do have these kind of situations because you have someone who's barricaded that wants to be able to inflict more harm. So they have the firefighters come in and they start popping shots. I personally have seen a situation like that in the past up near New York City. But in this instance, he said, wait a second, I'm looking at this much more carefully now. This appears to be tear gas that was fired in through ferret rounds. And one of the reasons why they target the roof, Danielle and Keith, is because at times you do have that person who is inside, who's barricaded, that will go up into the attic area of the home. Another thing that they pointed out too is you're not seeing the flames come out of this fire. You're also not seeing any kind of specific type of smoke that is reflective of a fire.
Fire, right? No flames. We don't see any flames.
So this is why you immediately think that it's a fire, but then you're going to point yourself to the fact that from a law enforcement perspective and from what an expert has seen in the past in these situations and has executed himself, this is tear gas.
Yeah, it's a decent-sized home, as we can still get a look at it from.
And you could see in that shot, Keith, I don't mean on that chopper shot. If we can go back for the moment, you did see that bear cat that was there in front of the actual property there. They're off of Camellia and Chase Street. You had that bear cat, and it had that battering ram that was able to go in right in the gable area right above the garage there. I'm sorry, I just wanted to point that out as we saw that on the shot there on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
we saw somebody that appeared to exit that hole.
Right. Yeah. It Mario, as you can see, it is a decent-sized home, and so there is a lot of smoke. And so if that is tear gas smoke, you would think it was because it's such a large house. They want to make sure that it has the impact it's supposed to have.
And one of the things you're looking at, I don't know if we have our photographer that can zoom in on some of those windows on the upper edge there, if they were broken in. Usually those are going to go. Thank you so much to that gentleman in the field there. You can see some broken windows there. That's would be the reflective of where a round may have gone in, which is what my expert, as we were talking about this and seeing this scene play out here. Also, keep in mind the time of day here. We're fortunate that this is happening right now with daylight, because obviously much more challenging in these situations. And I'm going to reference that Bearcat vehicle. That's that military-style assault vehicle that you see where the officers are finding cover right behind. It's right in front of the home there. That was the vehicle that they used a few minutes ago with that with that armored piece at the end of it, a barricade, to go through and punch into that house. But again, key thing here, as I was indicating just moments ago, the time of day. You have sunlight. You're able to see your operations much better. And at the same time, when you do have SWAT surrounding the perimeter of a home, they need to have a better understanding of what this situation is like, because you don't want to have crossfire. That's the biggest danger in these situations. When you talk to members of SWAT or law enforcement that have been in these kind of situations, crossfire is also a major situation they want to avoid, and it is one of the greatest dangers that they have to face. So right now, with the sun setting this time of day, that is a favor for law enforcement. The question is how long before they're able to apprehend this suspect, or he comes out of the home and says, I've had enough.
Yeah, they don't have much time. The sun will set possibly in an hour and a half or so. But Mario, talk about the psychological aspect of bringing out the family and trying to yell out his name, call him by name, tell him to come out, that they want to help him, possibly have contact, call him on a telephone to try to get him, to come out peacefully, because that is what they want to do, is resolve this peacefully.
You look at anybody that has a connection, Daniela, to the suspect, who they love, who they care, whether it be a child, a child usually, if it's a young child, not necessarily, but obviously an older child, someone who's a spouse, a parent. I believe, if I recall correctly, it was back in January when we had a situation on the east side of town. I know, Keith, you remember that case. We had all those cops there on the east side after that big shootout. I believe it was the girlfriend that helped out in that case. In these instances, officers and law enforcement, when they're negotiating with a suspect and they just can't break through to them, or they try to also bring in that family member to help convince them to exit without any issues.
Okay. All right, Mario, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to any other information that you get for us. And in the meantime, we're going to go back to this live shot and Bill Barajas on the ground, because as you can look and see that home right there, more and more smoke is pouring out of that home. Bill, we know you're on the ground there. What can you tell us?
Well, the smoke has really picked up here, Keith, in just the last few seconds. I, too, as Mario said, have been in contact with a source, a law enforcement source, who did believe that what was the smoke earlier was tear gas rounds. But now we're unclear whether that is still the case right now. I did see just moments ago a tweet from Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez saying that the fire department was here and that they were ready and we're going to be taking preventative measures to protect the homes next door, so adjacent to the home where you can see all that smoke. But in just the last few seconds, that smoke has really picked up. I think me and Keith were just talking a few moments ago about it sort of dying down. But you know, things have changed drastically here over the last few seconds, and that's in our experience, as Mario mentioned, when we're out in these scenes, what tends to happen. You don't ever want it to happen, but it tends to, and you can see the fire trucks now moving towards that home right now. So we are standing by, waiting to see if they are going to be able to try and
I would say, Bill, from experience, I would say, Bill, from experience covering fires, Keith and I were saying that it's really consistent with what looks like a smoke coming from a fire. You know, we don't have that confirmed, but it's billowing and it's getting darker, right?
Yeah, well, the smoke now, it does appear to be darker and it is thicker. And Bill, I guess can you do a smell test out there? But does it smell like there's a fire taking place, or does it smell like anything else? Or are you irritated? Are your eyes getting irritated from where you are right now?
No, not at this point. I was actually asked that moments ago. Not at this point. But again, we are held pretty far back for our safety, for the safety of the residents here. So I can't quite get a smell for what that is right now. But you guys are right. It does appear, from where I'm standing right now, that is more than just tear gas at this point.
This situation and this moment is very important because the person inside, Pablo Patino, like will be overcome by smoke at this point, suffer from smoke inhalation, you know, and I think he'll have to make that final decision if he will stay in or come out. And guys, go ahead.
And I was going to say, guys, as I mentioned earlier, you know, the big thing here is if it is smoke coming from a fire, firefighters obviously are closer now to that home, but it's hard for them to try to get in there and fight that fire if there is a danger to these defenseless firefighters who are working to put out this fire. So now you have not just that home and the person that's inside in danger, but now you have the adjacent homes that are now at risk because firefighters cannot get to this house.
Yeah, Pablo Patino, the individual who they believe is in there, you know, it also would depend on what part of the house he's in. It's a two-story home, and so if it's tear gas at the top, or if it's even a fire that may have been set, what he would need to do is go down to the first floor. I don't know if there's a basement in there. And
firefighters, though, they will try to protect the adjacent homes as much as they can. You know, obviously they don't want it to catch fire, but these firefighters are exposing themselves trying to put out this home fire, not knowing of the threat that's inside. We know Patino is considered dangerous because he attempted to set his estranged wife's parents' home on fire earlier this week and then attempted to hit her with his vehicle. And so I think that this is something that law enforcement is all considering, whether to decide what to do at this point.
Yeah, those actions would certainly indicate that he could be volatile.
And guys, we are now seeing flames. We are now seeing flames. We are now seeing flames coming from the home, from the top of the home. You can see them there. The Harris County Fire Marshal also just pulled up. She is in that black Tahoe Suburban that is driving down the street. But the smoke has now developed into a fire. Fire is coming from the top of that home, and there are significant flames right now.
Those are big flames. And the concern now goes to, of course, the safety of Pablo Patino, the neighbors' homes, which they may try to douse because those can spark like really quickly.
Yeah, and the incident earlier this week, you know, obviously very dangerous, trying to accused of setting a home on fire and then hitting his estranged wife with a car. Very dangerous, very violent actions. No firearms were mentioned or used in those instances, but in a situation like this where you have an individual who might be volatile, you don't know if he's going to have a weapon in the house or not, so you just can't have the firefighters rush to that scene and try to put that fire out.
And something that law enforcement, Bill, are also considering, like if he is inside his home still, he's probably overcome by smoke at this point because that home, it's a big home, but it's billowing. You know, that smoke is really coming out. So probably trying to assess, you know, his situation and how he is and figure out if they should enter, not enter.
And I think for everyone here, homeowners, law enforcement, Patino's family, this is the worst case scenario, right? You have a home that is now engulfed in flames. You can see them shooting out from the top of that home. You have adjacent houses that are now at risk. Luckily, law enforcement was able to get people away from that area, but you're talking about other folks now losing their home. And because you see that fire, it reminds you that this is a person that is accused of starting another fire earlier this week at his estranged wife's parents' home. So it's not, it wouldn't be a situation where you wouldn't think that he wouldn't have the materials to start a fire inside his very own home.
Right. Yeah. And wow, those flames are huge.
Yeah, certainly, and not only putting himself in danger, firefighters and
People around him.
the law enforcement, but those neighbors as well.
Do you see law enforcement backing up a little bit, Bill, out there, or what is their stance? Like, how defensive are they going to go here with this fire? Does it look like they're getting hoses out and they're going to douse this, or let it burn out?
Guys, it's hard to tell from my vantage point because we are so far back. There are so many emergency vehicles. I've been sort of walking around trying to navigate my way through the crowd. But again, it's hard to sort of see what law enforcement and where exactly they are. If he is inside the home, we obviously don't want to also give their positions away. But from walking a few feet away, we cannot see any sort of movement from firefighters right now. Again, the situation usually is that they don't tend to try to fight a fire or get close to a situation like this until the danger has been assessed and taken care of. So it'll be interesting to see what the decision is here as that fire just intensifies. And just we were talking about smoke a few minutes ago, and now you see where it is.
I can assure you the inside of that house is completely taken over by smoke.
Yeah, well, and our biggest question has been answered. We were wondering if that smoke was the result of tear gas or a fire. There may have been tear gas charges earlier, but we certainly know now that the flames, of course, what we're seeing from a fire, but that smoke from a fire as well.
And Daniela, to your question earlier, now we see, I don't know if my cameraman Brett can zoom in on it, but you can now see the spring fire truck getting closer to that home. So we'll have to wait and see whether they get out and actually pull out the hoses and try to put this fire out. I guess the other question would be here is, at what point do you have to go in? Do you have to try to assess the situation and see if he's what the situation is inside the home so that firefighters can get in there and put this out?
I mean, the assessment right now is to try to figure out, as you mentioned, the risk, because if Pablo Patino is actually inside that home, he may not, be in good shape, or he may be having trouble breathing, if not already taken over, by that smoke. And so protection of the homes around is also, I think, very important to them. They could douse those homes next to them. But look, we see firefighters right now on the roof. Yeah, we're seeing that video, Bill.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I was going to point out, is just the fact that my photographer, who's has got his eye behind the lens here, can see that firefighters are now out of the vehicle, out of their fire trucks, and have started trying to approach the home to what we believe is to try to put out and fight this fire.
Okay, yeah, we're certainly going to hope for their safety indeed, because we know that Pablo Patino, who they think is inside, obviously he's a suspect right now, but they certainly probably want him to be as safe as possible if he's going to be okay. But they also have to be concerned about those homes that are next door and across the street. We don't know what's behind that house as well, but that fire is moving rapidly on that roof right now, without a doubt. If you're just now tuning in, this is North Harris County near Spring. This is a home near Lotus Blossom Court and Camellia Chase Court. And inside, police believe that there is a man named Pablo Patino who was barricaded inside the house. Believe he still is barricaded inside that house. And he is also a suspect accused of setting another home on fire earlier this week, the home of his in-laws, and then hitting his estranged wife with a car. And they believe that he might be the man who was in this house, his own house here, who has set it on fire.
Whatever's inside that house and whatever is burning, I mean, it is just making those flames intense, which becomes extremely dangerous for those homes next door. I mean, law enforcement has done a great job of evacuating everyone from that area, but how scary to watch this unfold in your neighborhood. We do have Mario Diaz also following this closely, calling his contacts, his law enforcement contacts, trying to get information as to what they're thinking, what's their strategy, what the plan is. Let's go to him right now. Mario?
How dangerous it is for neighbors there, Daniela. But you think about the firefighters now, and that's the main priority for SWAT members in these kind of situations, is to provide the proper cover for firefighters to, as they examine this and figure out how to tackle this fire, which is incredible to see these flames just jump out through the second story of that home off of the roof portion there, as you can see. It really is incredible. Now they're trying to figure out exactly what's the best way to tackle it, knowing that inside you did have somebody who had barricaded themselves and held law enforcement at bay there for quite some time throughout the course of this afternoon. This all happening very, very quickly here in the last, I would say, 25 to 30 minutes from when we first started seeing the action here with that smoke that started emanating there, to suddenly, after about 15 minutes of that smoke, you're seeing these flames go in there. But again, the big concern is safety for the firefighters as they make their way down that road and into the home. Think about it. Every time a firefighter, for the most part, shows up to an emergency, they're not figuring that there's going to be a challenge that they have to deal with on the other side.
Or a threat, for sure.
In terms of a human being who might be trying to do them harm. But you can see this is what they're facing in terms of the fire. Keep in mind, there is somebody else that we know of that was barricaded inside that home.
Mario, you know, from our experience of covering fires, Keith and I were talking about, like, if Pablo Patino is still inside his home, he has been overcome by smoke, if not flames by now. That house is large, but smoke travels so fast. I can only imagine if he's inside that home, like, it's not in a great situation for him.
But what I've been looking at that home, and if you look at the shots, you're not seeing the smoke from the first floor or from those areas. It's up in the upper area of that home. So you don't know exactly where he might be, which makes this very challenging, right? And you don't know exactly where was the initial start of this particular fire. Where did it ignite from and start to really take off? Was it up on the second floor? Was it up in the attic?
Yeah, it looked like it was all coming out from the attic, at least the smoke was at the beginning.
Right. Yeah, it seemed like it was isolated, but it certainly has spread not only from the attic area, but I would imagine both floors plus the attic are probably on fire right now when you look at those flames. And you know, I was thinking, looking at this, one of the good things is, if you can pull anything good out of this, is now you see water being sprayed, poured on top of that. Yeah, that clear skies, so visibility is not an issue. And then also that smoke was rising and the flames were rising straight up, so it doesn't appear that there's any winds. That, of course, made me think about Frank Billingsley, our chief meteorologist, and the weather in this situation. But Frank just gave us a good question to think about and ponder. You know, we saw just a little bit of smoke, and then all of a sudden it got thicker, and now we're seeing these flames. Could this individual have opened the gas line to a water heater in that attic, and whatever, if there was a small fire taking place, did that cause it to erupt?
Right. It could be a combination of things. Exactly when he started seeing that law enforcement officers move in with that armored vehicle, and they breached the area above the gable, right above the garage there. At that point, you're knowing that the grains of sand are going through the hourglass very, very quickly, and it's near the end.
We saw that ladder. The firefighters, raised their ladder, erected that, and tried to get it as close as they could to try to douse all that water, as they're doing right now. Right. They're just trying to soak that roof and put out those flames because they just seem like they're getting more and more intense. But it's very difficult for firefighters to even get close to something like this.
And fortunately, we do know that the neighborhood had been evacuated, right? Yes. So we do know that people in the neighboring homes that could perhaps see a flicker or a few flames come into their yard or maybe touch their home, because you know how construction is so close nowadays. They've been moved out of those residences, so at least we know that those homes do not have anyone inside them. So that eliminates one potential challenge and one danger out there for others. But still, you're still dealing with the unknown of where is this person? Has he been overcome by flames? Is he hiding in another portion of the home? That is the unknown we still don't have the answers to.
Yeah, and those flames are still raging. It looks like they might be making some progress on them right now. We're seeing some of that smoke darken up, actually.
Mario, we also know that, law enforcement has brought out the family to try to speak to the suspect inside, try to get him to come out, to talk to him on the phone. And and to just tell him to surrender peacefully. So they can help him in whatever situation he may be in, but they were unsuccessful in doing that at this point. We don't know if they've had any communication with him whatsoever, but we do know that's something that they tried to do, before it gets to this point.
It's something that's very common, and we have seen it in the past. You want that connection to the person inside. They are dealing with a situation right now where they're not acting rationally. Yeah. They're irrational. So you want to bring them back to being rational, to maybe connect with a family member and ask themselves at that point, what am I really doing here? And to end it. And that's why you bring the family members in these situations to negotiate, to break through, because law enforcement, it's a challenge for them, and sometimes they just cannot get through to that individual.
Right.
Yeah, and, law enforcement, we've had several incidents in the last couple of days this week that have been domestic issues where people have not only, Mr. Patino was accused of trying to set his in-laws' home on fire and then hitting his estranged wife with a car, but then we also know there have been some murder-suicides. And so one of the things that law enforcement have really focused on in the last couple of days with these incidents is they put a focus on mental health and also on the need to curb and stop these domestic abuse and domestic violence incidents that can oftentimes lead to something like this.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges that you have right now with many violent crimes that we have seen throughout the Houston area and beyond in recent months, as well as in the last few years since the pandemic. Also being told that, and back to Daniela's point about bringing the family in, sometimes what they do with the family in these situations is actually get a recording of the family member pleading them. Get the recording, then take the recording to the site and have it looped and played over again to try to get the person out.
Just like on a speaker so they can hear it, because sometimes they don't have contact through a cell phone or something like that.
Yeah, it also keeps down on the number of people who are in the area that could be placed in harm's way. So you want that assistance from that family. Hopefully the family members can try to convince an individual to come out, but you don't put them in danger and harm's way by actually bringing them out there physically. I
don't know if our crew in our field can hear us, our photographer, but if they could zoom into the home a little bit, I'd like to see how much of the home has been damaged. Clearly the roof has, the top floor has as well, but, just trying to figure out how damaged it is and what his positioning could be if he could be in any other position that's not, near the fire.
Yeah, and those flames really erupted in the last 5 or 10 minutes or so, and we got pretty black smoke there. Some of it started to get white again. A fire is never good, but one of the good signs in a fire, usually, unless we're talking, some type of chemical or electric fire, is white smoke, because that gives you an indication that they're starting to get an upper hand and douse those flames. But that's still some pretty thick black smoke. You see our choppers up there live now, and you can still see some pretty thick black smoke coming out.
And I was talking to a law enforcement expert as we started seeing these flames, someone who has dealt in these situations in the past here in the Houston area and has seen these type of situations up close. I asked them about the flames coming out of the roof so quickly, and I said, could that possibly be insulation? And he pointed out, look, these are newer constructed homes. These are not homes from 30, 40 years ago. Newer construction homes have insulation that is meant to not go up in flames. So he was fascinated, for lack of a better term, at how quickly and how high these fires were actually breaching through the top of that roof, knowing that these are modern homes and the insulation isn't supposed to light up like a Roman candle, as what we saw 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, and we know that Mr. Patino is accused of using clothing to try to start the fires at his in-laws' home. Obviously, we have no idea what could have started the fire.
And a gas tank, he had a gas tank with him.
Yeah, and a gas tank as well. And so, right now we see Sky 2, the pictures right there, and those flames are still coming out in that thick black smoke.
It looks like so far, Keith, when you look closely, that the fire is contained to this home at the time, but we know how those, can spark quickly and it can travel fast. So, those embers can travel. So firefighters are doing a great job containing this fire right now, just to this home. But this is the back. Is this the front? This is still the front of the home. You can see how the roof is completely just gone. and so is the back of the home. There is no damage so far to the bottom of the home. So, but if you look through that little window right there, you can see the orange. You can see some flames.
Yeah,
there as well,
the roof almost fully engulfed now. And about 10 minutes ago, when these flames really started kicking up, they were pretty one strong, consistent column, but that clearly has spread across the entire roof. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez just a short time ago confirmed that the suspect is the one who started this fire. The suspect is the one who started this fire, and this again is his home. Again, the home of the suspect that he had shared with his family.
And I'm going to read the exact quote here, guys. If you don't mind, let me jump in here, Keith and Danielle. It says, info I have is that it was initiated by the barricaded suspect, meaning the fire. Now, obviously, there's going to be arson investigators that come in and investigate this to examine what was utilized to help get this house going with the way as quickly as it did. But keep in mind, as we were talking in the newsroom, this is somebody who obviously had a history of setting fires at properties, and someone who understood exactly what was going on. And it also brings into question exactly what was the smoke that was coming out early on that we saw from law enforcement. And as you can see, the crowd is gathering there. From that home at a distance. And I have to tell you, from covering these scenes, this is the box on the left is a fascinating scene for us to see, because usually we're not able to get a clear line of vision of a property or a residence when there's a barricade, because law enforcement takes such great steps to not only protect the public, but also make sure media is not going to get hit by any stray bullets or any gunfire. So the two angles here are remarkable for us to see from our perspectives, because usually in these situations, Keith, I know you've been there, and Danielle, I know you've been there, they don't allow media to have these type of direct shots in most cases.
No, and that's usually for safety purposes.
Right.
But Mario, I don't know if you can see the Sky 2 right there, that picture right there. And we now can obviously confirm that these flames are throughout the home, because you can see through that backyard, those windows on the first floor, you can see flames, heavy flames on that first floor. So this is a house that is fairly fully engulfed in flames right now.
Yeah, and completely overtaken by smoke. If Pablo Patino is inside of this home, we can see the house really just disintegrating, falling apart. That roof is starting to cave in. You know, I can imagine law enforcement right now are just going to never assume, but looking at the situation and possibly think that if he is in there, he's, you know, maybe not that may not be able to survive something like this.
Yeah, and goodness, you know, none of us, at least at this point, publicly know what was going on inside the family. Obviously, Mr. Patino was estranged from his wife, and there was the incident that occurred earlier this week. But my goodness, it is just a sad sight to see what was a family. And things end the way they seem to be ending at this moment. And one thing, Mario, seeing the back of the home and how close these homes are together, and the fencing, that's, you know, pretty close as well. Law enforcement also have to consider that he attempted to exit the home, and he tried to possibly, you know, jump a fence, or because you can see law enforcement surrounding the home, waiting to see if that's something that he would have considered doing. And that shot right there, you look at the two gentlemen of law enforcement, two members of SWAT to the right, they're standing up. They're not taking cover. Right. They're in position. Right. They're simply standing there and watching this burn. And normally in these kind of situations, you see members of SWAT that are still crouched, they're down, they're doing everything they can to protect themselves. To make sure that, mode. Right. Yeah, in this case, it looks like they aren't concerned about that. That could give us some indication of Mr. Patino's fate at this moment. Right, and remember, we saw that Bearcat come in there, that military-style law enforcement vehicle that broke the gable earlier, if you remember, early on, and then minutes later we saw the flames start to really go in there. Remember, law enforcement was texting, he said, keep in mind that, you know, when you create those kind of holes, what happens? You have oxygen that starts getting into the home, winds that can help, mainly oxygen, because the fires needs oxygen to help fuel the fire that much more. Wow. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And Mario, I think what we can see... They're dousing the roof of the neighbor to the right, Keith. Is that you seeing those flames coming from the roof of the neighbor? That's what it looks like, that one of the neighbor's homes actually now could be impacted. We're gonna wait to see for the chopper to turn. Let's go to Bill Barajas right now. He is on the ground. He's giving us that
that ground view right there. And although, Bill, you are far away, you're as close as you can be, staying safe, you are getting information and talking to neighbors as well. How is everyone, they're seeing this, and what is their reaction to all of this happening in their neighborhood, Bill?
Well, they can't believe that it's happening in their neighborhood. But before we get to that, I just really quickly, just in the last few moments, we heard law enforcement again trying to make contact with Pablo Patino, telling him, "We know you're in there. Come out. We know you're in there." So they are still at this point trying to make contact with him as the fire rages on at the home there. Again, as Mario.
Bill, we're going to interrupt you real quick because I think we're seeing somebody.
Bill, he's coming out.
It appears he's coming out. That's what we're hearing down here on the ground. It appears he is coming out. That's what we're hearing on the ground.
Okay, yes.
Okay,
so that individual, that, as Bill just said, it does look like that is an individual who looks like Pablo Patino.
He came out of a
did
window.
come out of a window. That maybe that same window that was breached by that Bearcat.
Yeah, and he jumped off the roof. That's what it appeared, at least. Bill confirming that he's hearing there from law enforcement that he is exiting that home.
Goodness.
Incredible moment that we
Absolutely.
were watching this and saw somebody exit that roof.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. At first, we couldn't tell if that was a firefighter trying to gain a better vantage point there at that house, but it looks like an individual who was in pants and a T-shirt.
Yeah, we're going to try to rewind that and see if we can see it again.
From this distance, seeing a video of Pablo Patino earlier this week, that did look like a gentleman who looks like him. And so it appears that, and as Bill just said just moments ago, they were still, law enforcement, asking Mr. Patino to come out. They said they knew he was still in there. And apparently he heard them and for whatever reason decided at this point, as his house is fully engulfed in flames and possibly close to being on the verge of collapse, he decided to come out.
Right. Let's go to Mario Diaz. He's been watching this, talking to his law enforcement contacts as well, seeing it. Mario, did you see what we saw?
I just saw it. And, Danielle and Keith, remember what we were talking about earlier? We saw most of the flames taking place from the second floor and above, right, in the attic area. Yeah. So this could have been something where, as we know, the fire was initiated. The fire was initiated by the suspect, according to Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. This person could have easily gone into another portion of the home, which he did, and found himself a safe place until he realized that, again, time's up. There's nothing else I can do here. But he just came out. Law enforcement has him now in custody because we saw him come down. And now that obviously is going to provide the opportunity for firefighters to go in there, it appears, and really fight this fire, or if they're going to just let it burn and obviously contain it to the point where it doesn't impact any other homes. But that is one of the big question marks that has been answered here, whether or not that individual is still alive and can he still pose a threat. It appears that's no longer the case here.
Yeah,
right.
And we know firefighters are doing everything that they can. It looks like this structure is lost, but they certainly are trying to make sure it doesn't spread. And I know they're doing everything they can, but we're wondering if they're going to have the ability, if they have more engines there on the ground to try to put more water on this fire.
Yeah, there's still a bit of a defensive mode because firefighters don't know what is in that house. If there's something still that could be dangerous for the firefighters to go in other than this fire. And then once he exits that home, SWAT team goes in and they put him on the ground and they try to control him and take him to safety as well, because this is still a very dangerous situation and to be near this home.
Yeah, you see that water shooting between the two homes right there because you have the one home on fire, but they're trying to make sure, they're doing their best to make sure that they're dousing the house next door so it does not catch fire.
Just an incredible scene here play out in the last hour, guys. From what we knew in the very beginning of the situation to where we're at now. Usually we don't see these kind of situations end like this.
Yeah, and Mario, there might have been some sort of contact with him where just until seconds ago, before we saw him exit the home, Bill was saying on the ground that he heard them call out his name and say, "Pablo, we know you're in there, come out, come out." And then he was just like suddenly on the roof.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, though, we want to take a look at that video just moments ago, about 2 or 3 minutes ago at this point, when who we believe Pablo Patino, right there in that T-shirt, right there on the top of the window that might be the garage of that home, coming out, and he's now kind of dangling.
And you see all the lights that are marking him there as well, you see?
Right, yes, that's law enforcement there, just marking him as you're saying. But I mean, I can only imagine being in that home for so long, like how all that smoke that he's been inhaling, you know, he probably said, like, I gotta go now or I'm not getting out of this. And he took that risk. Wow, Mario. I mean, right now, as they question him and take him into custody, and you know they're gonna take him to the medical services to make sure that he's okay, give him some oxygen, and they're
gonna have a psychological evaluation as well.
And then attempt to salvage whatever they can of this home. You know, it's gone, it's going to burn, but trying to save those other homes, I think, is a priority at this point, and making sure those firefighters are safe.
Yeah, and I have to say, you know, if there's any good that can be pulled out of any of this, hopefully, you know, the other houses nearby will not end up being impacted.
Keith, you can see the firefighters working their way up that driveway there just a moment ago. You can see the hose that's moving there, and they're going into that other yard. You saw 3 firefighters pulling that hose in between that house. It looks like in the house right beside it. And there they go. You can see more of them now making their way towards the home area to start putting more water in to this home. They were attacking it from high above, which is the ladder. That's all they could basically do at that point until this suspect surrendered, and they were able to now move in and start really fighting this fire the way
aggressively.
Aggressively, the way firefighters normally tackle house fires like this.
And without that threat of not knowing who's in there and if they have weapons and if their lives are in danger as well.
Definitely some volatile, violent, dangerous actions taken, but I guess we've gotten to the point where we can say Mr. Patino at least wasn't injured or consider taking his own life and dying in those flames. You know, so we'll see how law enforcement deals with the rest of this.
And Mario, you know, the biggest fear the law enforcement have, we've talked about this, was that shots could have been fired. You know, there are people around there. And that's something that they were trying to prevent. And so I think that that's something that law enforcement is breathing a sigh of relief, knowing that they did not get to that point, and that the firefighters can move in and do their job now. Yeah,
I've seen that happen before, as I indicated earlier. I know that you guys have obviously covered so many stories that are similar that we've seen nationwide and that we've reported on. And if you think about this situation, as we see these law enforcement officers now more subdued, and as if they say, we've done our job here, it's all we can do, it's really remarkable to think that really, as of right now, that we know of, there's been no significant injuries.
Yeah, Mario, we're seeing the suspect right now on a stretcher, what appears to be a stretcher, and he's surrounded by law enforcement. And probably attempting to analyze him and assess how he's doing medically. But it looks like he's on a stretcher, and he's surrounded by a lot of law enforcement on one of these streets.
Imagine what that sight must be like right now. You're sitting in the middle of your street that you normally have driven down hundreds of times before. Now there's all these law enforcement officers, and you're looking at your home in flames, complete ruins. And you were the person who was the last one inside of that home.
We're zooming in a little bit more.
It looks like Pablo Patino is not actually on the stretcher. He's standing up next to the stretcher, so he's probably behind his back. Yes, probably being evaluated. They're talking to him, and again, you know, Mario, like you said, they're most likely they're going to assess any immediate needs, and they're going to go ahead and get him away and get psychologically evaluated, and then see if there's any other treatment that needs to take place.
A good sign is that he's standing, you know, and he's possibly speaking here to law enforcement and. Trying to make sure that he's okay. That's the first priority, you know, and then move on from there.
Yeah, and we aren't getting a look at the house right now, but it was a good sign they have gotten a lot of progress on that, knocking those flames down. So that's a good sign to see as well. And at this point, it looks like none of the homes nearby are in danger.